The gunshot echoed through the saloon just as Eliza Hartwell realized her husband had been cheating at cards for the last 3 months, and now someone had finally put a bullet through his chest. It was June 1878 in Deadwood, South Dakota, and the gold rush had brought every kind of desperate soul to this muddy street town, including her late husband Thomas, who lay bleeding out on the warped wooden floor while she stood frozen at the top of the stairs, her hand gripping the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. She did not scream. She did not cry. She simply watched as the life drained from the man who had promised her everything and delivered nothing but bruises, debts, and a reputation she would never escape. The marshal came and went. The undertaker measured Thomas for a pine box. The saloon owner, a gruff man named Polk, informed Eliza that she had 3 days to clear out of the room above the bar that Thomas had been renting with money he did not have. She nodded mechanically, her dark blonde hair hanging limp around her face, her green eyes empty of everything except a dull acceptance that this was simply how her life would continue to unfold, one disaster after another, until she either died or disappeared into the kind of work that women without options eventually found themselves doing. She packed what little she owned into a carpet bag that had seen better days. Clothes mostly, a few pieces of cheap jewelry Thomas had given her in the early days when he still pretended to care, a tintype of her parents who had died of cholera when she was 16. That had been 5 years ago back in Ohio before she met Thomas at a church social and believed his promises of adventure and prosperity out west. She had been so young, so foolish, so eager to escape the pitying looks of her neighbors who saw her as an orphan to be managed rather than a person with dreams of her own. The streets of Deadwood were thick with mud from the recent rains, and Eliza picked her way carefully toward the boarding house on the edge of town, where she hoped to find cheaper lodging. Men stared as she passed, their eyes calculating, assessing, and she pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders even though the summer air was warm. She knew what they saw. A young widow, alone, probably desperate. She was all of those things, but she would be damned if she would give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. The boarding house was run by a severe woman named Mrs. Calloway who looked Eliza up and down with obvious disapproval. "I heard about your husband," she said, her voice clipped. "Cheater got what he deserved, from what folks are saying." Eliza met her gaze steadily. "I need a room. I can pay for 1 week." "What will you do after that week?" Mrs. Calloway asked, one eyebrow raised. "I will find work." "What kind of work? There's not much respectable employment for a woman alone in a town like this." Eliza felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. "Then I will find whatever work there is." Mrs. Calloway studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Room 3, top of the stairs, 1 week, then we will talk again." She took Eliza's money, counted it carefully, and handed over a key. "Supper is at 6. Do not be late." The room was small and plain, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window that looked out over the street. Eliza set her carpetbag on the bed and sat down beside it, her hands folded in her lap. She should feel something, she thought. Relief that Thomas was gone. Fear about her future. Grief for the girl she had been who thought love and marriage would save her. But there was nothing, just a vast emptiness that seemed to stretch out in all directions, swallowing everything. She did not go down for supper. She lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling and listened to the sounds of the town outside. Horses, wagons, laughter, shouting, the occasional gunshot. Deadwood never really slept, and neither did she, not truly. She drifted in and out of a restless half-consciousness until dawn light crept through the window and another day began. By the end of the week, Eliza had applied for work at every shop, restaurant, and business establishment that might hire a woman. The answer was always the same: no positions available, or we need someone with references, or we cannot afford additional help right now. The truth, unspoken but clear, was that no one wanted to hire the widow of a known cheat, a woman with no family and no prospects, Someone who might bring bad luck or bad associations. Mrs. Calloway found her sitting on the front porch of the boarding house on the 7th evening, watching the sun set over the hills. "Have you found work?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "No," Eliza said quietly. "I see." Mrs. Calloway sat down in the rocking chair beside her. "There is a man who owns a ranch about 10 miles north of here. He came into town yesterday looking for someone to help with cooking and cleaning. His wife died last winter, and he has been managing on his own, but he needs help. The work is hard, and the place is isolated, but it is respectable employment, and he pays fairly." Eliza turned to look at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because despite what happened to your husband, I do not think you are a bad person. Just an unlucky one. And because I was young and alone once too, and someone gave me a chance when I needed it." She stood up, brushing off her skirts. "His name is Jacob Brennan. He will be at the general store tomorrow morning at 8 if you want to speak with him." "Thank you," Eliza said, and meant it. Mrs. Calloway nodded. "Do not make me regret it." Jacob Brennan was not what Eliza expected. When she arrived at the general store the next morning, she found a man in his late 20s, tall and lean, with dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck and blue eyes that seemed to take in everything without judgment. He wore typical ranch clothes, denim pants and a worn shirt, a hat that had seen many seasons, and boots that were scuffed but well maintained. He was loading supplies into a wagon when she approached. "Mr. Brennan," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. He turned, and his gaze swept over her quickly before settling on her face. "Yes?" "My name is Eliza Hartwell. Mrs. Calloway from the boarding house mentioned you might be looking for help at your ranch." Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, but he did not comment. "You know how to cook? Clean? Basic household work? Yes? You understand the ranch is 10 miles from town? You would live there in a separate cabin. I would provide room and board plus wages. The work is steady, but it is not easy. I understand." He studied her for a long moment, and Eliza forced herself to hold his gaze, to not look away or show weakness. Finally, he nodded. "All right. If you can be ready in an hour, you can ride out with me today. We can try it for a month and see how it works." "Thank you," she said. "I will be ready." She was back at the boarding house within 10 minutes, packed and settled her remaining bill with Mrs. Calloway, who gave her an approving nod. "Good luck, girl," she said. "Jacob Brennan is a decent man, lost his wife to pneumonia last winter, been struggling since. Treat him fairly, and he'll do the same for you." Eliza met Jacob at the general store an hour later, her carpet bag in hand. He helped her up onto the wagon seat without comment, and they set off north, leaving Deadwood behind. The road was rough, winding through pine forests and open grassland, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Eliza was grateful for the silence. She was tired of explaining herself, tired of seeing pity or suspicion in people's eyes. Finally, Jacob said, "I heard about your husband. I am sorry for your loss." Eliza looked at him sharply, but his expression was neutral, his eyes on the road. "Are you?" "Sorry that you lost someone, yes. Sorry that he is gone, I cannot say, since I did not know him." "He was not a good man," Eliza said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "He drank, he gambled, he raised his fists more often than his voice. I am not sorry he is dead, and I will not pretend to be." Jacob was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. What you feel is your business. I am not hiring you to mourn. I am hiring you to help run a ranch." Something in Eliza's chest loosened slightly. "Then we understand each other." "I believe we do." The ranch appeared as they crested a rise, a sprawling property with a main house, a barn, a chicken coop, and several smaller outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance and horses moved in a fenced pasture near the barn. It was beautiful in a stark, practical way, the kind of place built by hard work and determination. Jacob pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a small cabin set apart from the main house. "This will be yours," he said, climbing down and offering her a hand. "It is not fancy, but it is clean and dry. The main house is where you will do most of the work. I eat breakfast at 6, dinner at noon, supper at 7, laundry once a week, cleaning as needed. If you need anything, let me know." Eliza stepped down from the wagon and looked at the cabin. It was small, just one room from what she could see, but it had a solid door and glass windows and a little porch. It was more than she had expected, more than she deserved. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jacob carried her bag to the cabin door. "Take today to settle in. You can start tomorrow." He tipped his hat and walked back toward the main house, leaving her alone. Eliza pushed open the door and stepped inside. The cabin was indeed small, but it was clean, with a narrow bed, a small table and chair, a washstand, and a stove in the corner. There were curtains on the windows, faded but cheerful, and a quilt on the bed that looked handmade. It was simple, but it was hers, at least for now, and that was enough. She unpacked her few belongings, washed her face and hands in the basin, and then sat on the bed, her hands folded in her lap. The silence of the ranch was different from the silence of Deadwood. There the quiet had been oppressive, weighted with judgment and fear. Here it was open, expansive, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the whisper of wind through the pines. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Eliza felt like she could breathe. The next morning she woke before dawn and made her way to the main house. Jacob was already up, tending to the animals, and she let herself into the kitchen. It was a good-sized room, well-equipped, though it showed signs of neglect. Dishes were piled in the sink, the floor needed sweeping, and the stove needed cleaning. She set to work, and by the time Jacob came in for breakfast, she had coffee brewing, eggs frying, and biscuits baking in the oven. He paused in the doorway, surprise clear on his face. "You did not have to do all this." "You hired me to cook," Eliza said, setting a plate in front of him, "so I am cooking." He sat down slowly, as if he had forgotten what it was like to have someone take care of him. He ate in silence, but she could see the tension in his shoulders ease slightly, could see something like relief in his eyes. When he finished, he looked up at her. "That was the best meal I have had in months, thank you." "You're welcome." They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Eliza cooked and cleaned and did laundry, and Jacob worked the ranch, tending cattle and horses, mending fences and buildings, doing the 1,000 tasks that kept a place like this running. They did not talk much, but the silence between them was comfortable, easy. Eliza appreciated that he did not pry, did not ask questions she did not want to answer. He treated her with respect, paid her fairly, and left her to her work. But sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression she could not quite read, something between curiosity and concern. And sometimes late at night when she lay in her cabin listening to the wind, she found herself thinking about him, about the sadness that lingered in his eyes, about the way he moved through the world like a man carrying a weight he could not set down. One evening in late July, a storm rolled in fast and fierce, the kind of sudden violence the plains were known for. Eliza was in the main house finishing the supper dishes when the first crack of thunder shook the windows. She looked out and saw the sky had turned a sickly green, and the wind was whipping the trees into a frenzy. Jacob burst through the door, rain already soaking his shirt. "We need to get the horses into the barn. The cattle will scatter, but I can round them up later. Come on." Eliza did not hesitate. She grabbed a shawl and followed him out into the storm. The rain was cold and driving, stinging her face and soaking her clothes within seconds. They worked together, herding the horses into the barn, securing the doors, checking that everything was battened down. Lightning split the sky and thunder rolled across the hills like cannon fire. When they finally made it back to the main house, they were both drenched and shaking. Jacob grabbed towels and handed one to Eliza, then built up the fire in the stove. "You should change into dry clothes," he said, his voice rough. "I will make coffee." Eliza nodded and started toward the door, but Jacob caught her arm. "Wait. The storm is getting worse. You should stay here tonight. That cabin is not as sturdy as this house, and I do not want you out there alone if the wind picks up more." She looked at him, surprised. "I will be fine." "Please," he said, and there was something raw in his voice, something that made her pause. "Just stay. There is a room upstairs you can use. It was my wife's sewing room. There's a bed in there." Eliza hesitated, then nodded. "All right." She changed into the one dry dress she had, an old calico that was worn but clean, and came back downstairs. Jacob had coffee ready, and they sat at the kitchen table listening to the storm rage outside. The lamplight flickered, casting long shadows across the walls, and for a while neither of them spoke. Finally, Jacob said, "You are doing good work here. I want you to know that." "Thank you," Eliza said quietly. "I also want you to know that you do not have to stay if you are not happy. I will not hold you to anything. You have a month-to-month arrangement, and you are free to leave whenever you choose." Eliza looked at him puzzled. "Why are you saying this?" He ran a hand through his damp hair, his expression troubled. "Because I see the way you hold yourself, like you are waiting for the next blow. And I do not want you to feel trapped here. This place, it should be a refuge, not a prison." Something sharp and painful twisted in Eliza's chest. "I am not used to people noticing things like that." "I notice," Jacob said simply. "My wife, Sarah, she came from a hard situation too. Her father was a mean drunk. She flinched every time I moved too fast near her for the first year we were married. It took a long time for her to trust that I would not hurt her." "I am sorry you lost her," Eliza said, "and she meant it. So am I." He stared into his coffee cup. "Every day I wake up and forget for a moment that she is gone. Then I remember, and it is like losing her all over again." Eliza understood that feeling, though not for the same reasons. She had felt it when her parents died, that constant forgetting and remembering, the grief that came in waves. "It does get easier," she said softly, "not better, but easier to carry." Jacob looked at her, and for the first time since they had met, she saw something break open in his expression, a vulnerability he had been holding back. "I hope so. Some days I'm not sure I can keep going." Without thinking, Eliza reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "You can. You will. Because that is what people like us do. We survive." He looked down at their hands, then back up at her face, and she saw something shift in his eyes, a recognition, a connection. "People like us," he repeated. "The broken ones." "Yes," Eliza said, "the broken ones." The storm raged through the night, but inside the house something had changed. They talked until the early hours of the morning, sharing stories they had never told anyone else. Jacob told her about Sarah, about how they had met at a barn raising when they were both 18, about the life they had built together, about how pneumonia had taken her so fast he barely had time to say goodbye. Eliza told him about her parents, about Thomas, about the bruises and the fear and the desperate hope that had died a little more each day until there was nothing left but emptiness. "I am too broken to love," she said finally, the words she had been carrying in her heart for so long. "I do not think I have anything left to give." Jacob was quiet for a moment, then he said softly, "Then let me hold the pieces together." Eliza looked at him startled. "What?" "You do not have to be whole to be worthy of care. You do not have to have anything to give to deserve kindness. Let me hold the pieces together while you figure out how to heal. No expectations, no demands, just two broken people trying to survive." Tears stung Eliza's eyes, the first tears she had shed since Thomas died. "I do not know how to do that." "Neither do I," Jacob said, "but maybe we can figure it out together." She did not answer, could not answer, but she did not pull her hand away from his, and they sat like that until the storm passed and dawn broke gray and quiet over the ranch. In the weeks that followed, something tentative and fragile began to grow between them. It was not romance, not yet, but it was connection, a gradual letting down of walls, a slow building of trust. Jacob showed Eliza how to ride a horse, how to mend a fence, how to read the weather in the color of the sky. Eliza taught him how to make bread that did not come out like a brick, how to darn socks properly, how to laugh at small things again. They worked side by side during the long summer days, and in the evenings they sat on the porch and talked or simply enjoyed the quiet. Jacob told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to expand the herd, about maybe getting some sheep, about building a better irrigation system. Eliza talked about wanting to learn to read better, about missing her mother's garden, about wondering what her life might have been like if her parents had lived. One evening in late August, Jacob said, "Will you come with me tomorrow? I need to ride out to the north pasture to check on the cattle, and I thought you might like to see more of the ranch." Eliza agreed, and the next morning they set out early, riding across the grasslands. It was a beautiful day, clear and bright, with a breeze that kept the heat at bay. Jacob pointed out landmarks, told her stories about the land, about the Lakota who had lived here before the treaties pushed them onto reservations, about the first settlers who had tried to make a life in this hard country. They stopped beside a creek to let the horses drink, and Jacob dismounted, offering Eliza a hand down. She took it, and when her feet touched the ground, he did not immediately let go. They stood there, hands linked, and Eliza felt her heart begin to race. "Eliza," Jacob said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I care about you. More than I probably should, more than I expected to. I know it is too soon. I know you are not ready. But I need you to know that what I feel is real, and I am willing to wait as long as it takes for you to heal, if you think there might be a chance for us." Eliza looked up at him, at the honesty in his blue eyes, at the hope and fear mingled together on his face. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from the possibility of being hurt again, but another part of her, a part she thought had died, wanted to be brave, wanted to reach for something good. "I care about you too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I am scared. I am so scared of getting it wrong again, of choosing badly, of ending up broken beyond repair." "You will not," Jacob said, "not with me. I promise you, Eliza, I will never raise a hand to you. I will never belittle you or control you or treat you as anything less than my equal. I will wait as long as you need. And if you decide you do not want this, I will accept that too. But please, do not let fear keep you from something that could be good." Eliza felt tears slide down her cheeks. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I have been broken too. And I know what it is like to need someone to hold the pieces together while you heal. Sarah did that for me once, and now I want to do it for you." She stepped closer, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her gently, as if she were something precious. She pressed her face against his chest and let herself cry, really cry, for the first time since her parents died. She cried for the girl she had been, for the years she had lost, for the pain she had endured. And Jacob just held her, one hand stroking her hair, his voice low and soothing as he murmured that it was all right, that she was safe, that he had her. When the tears finally stopped, Eliza pulled back and looked up at him. "I want to try," she said. "I'm terrified, but I want to try." Jacob smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter. "Then we will try. Together." They rode back to the ranch hand in hand, and that evening Jacob kissed her for the first time, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was nothing like the rough, demanding kisses Thomas had forced on her. This was gentle, respectful, a question rather than a demand. And when he pulled back, he searched her face, making sure she was all right. "I am all right," Eliza said, and she meant it. Their courtship was slow and careful, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Jacob never pushed, never demanded more than Eliza was ready to give. He courted her with small gestures, wildflowers left on her cabin doorstep, a new book ordered from town because she had mentioned wanting to improve her reading, a shawl he bought because he noticed her old one was threadbare. Eliza found herself blooming under his attention like a plant that had been starved of light and water finally getting what it needed. She laughed more, smiled more, allowed herself to hope that Maybe, just maybe, she could have a future that was different from her past. In September, they rode into Deadwood together to pick up supplies, and Eliza noticed the way people stared, the way they whispered. She held her head high, her hand tucked into the crook of Jacob's arm, and refused to be ashamed. Let them talk. She knew the truth of her life, and that was all that mattered. They were loading supplies into the wagon when a man approached, a stranger Eliza did not recognize. He was rough-looking, with cold eyes and a mean set to his mouth. "You Eliza Hartwell?" he asked. Eliza tensed. "I am." "Thomas owed me money, a lot of money. I figure his widow should make good on his debts." Jacob stepped between them, his expression hard. "Her husband is dead. His debts died with him." The man sneered. "That is not how it works. She benefited from his gambling, so she pays what he owed." "I benefited from nothing," Eliza said, her voice cold. "He drank and gambled away every cent we had. I have nothing to give you." "Then maybe you can work it off. I know a place that would pay good money for a pretty thing like you." Jacob moved so fast Eliza barely saw it. One moment the man was standing there. The next, Jacob had him by the shirt front, slammed against the side of the wagon. "You will walk away now," Jacob said, his voice low and dangerous, "and you will never speak to her again. If I see you near her, if I even hear that you have looked in her direction, I will make you regret it. Do we understand each other?" The man paled and nodded quickly. Jacob released him, and he stumbled away, disappearing into the crowd. Jacob turned to Eliza, and she saw the anger drain from his face, replaced by concern. "Are you all right?" Eliza nodded, though she was shaking. "Thank you." "You do not have to thank me for that. No one will threaten you while I'm here. No one." They finished loading the wagon in silence and left town as quickly as they could. On the ride back to the ranch, Eliza said, "I am sorry I brought trouble to you." "You did not bring anything," Jacob said firmly. "Your husband did, and he is gone. That man has no claim on you, legal or otherwise. If he comes around again, I will deal with it. I do not want you to have to fight my battles." Jacob reached over and took her hand. "We are in this together now. Your battles are my battles, and mine are yours. That is what it means to care for someone." Eliza squeezed his hand, her heart full of a feeling she was almost afraid to name. As autumn arrived and the leaves began to turn, Jacob asked Eliza to marry him. They were sitting on the porch of the main house, watching the sunset, and he turned to her, his expression serious. "I know we have not been together long," he said, "but I know what I feel, and I know what I want. I want to build a life with you, Eliza. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to face whatever comes together. Will you marry me?" Eliza looked at him, at this man who had been so patient, so kind, so steady. She thought about how far she had come since that terrible night in Deadwood, about how he had helped her find pieces of herself she thought were lost forever. She thought about the future they could build together, and for the first time in her life, she was not afraid. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Jacob pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, and Eliza felt something inside her shift and settle, like a bone finally set after a bad break. She was not completely healed, might never be completely healed, but she was whole enough to love and be loved, and that was enough. They were married in October in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with Mrs. Calloway and a few neighbors as witnesses. Eliza wore a simple blue dress that Jacob had bought for her, and Jacob wore his best suit, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Eliza felt tears of joy rather than sorrow for the first time in years. Their wedding night was gentle and sweet, Jacob taking his time, making sure Eliza felt safe and cherished every moment. He erased the memories of Thomas's rough handling, replaced them with tenderness and care, and when it was over, he held her close and told her he loved her, would always love her, would always protect her. "I love you too," Eliza whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Their first winter together was hard but good. The work was constant, the weather brutal at times, but they faced it together, and that made all the difference. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs, built a partnership that was as much about respect and friendship as it was about love. In the spring, Eliza discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified at first, afraid of bringing a child into the world, afraid of failing as a mother the way she felt she had failed at everything else. But Jacob was thrilled, and his joy was infectious. He doted on her, made sure she did not work too hard, rubbed her feet when they ached, and read to her in the evenings from books he ordered from back east. "You are going to be a wonderful mother," he told her one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her growing belly. "How can you be sure?" Eliza asked. "Because you have so much love inside you even after everything you have been through, and because I will be right beside you every step of the way." Their son was born in December 1879, a healthy, squalling baby with dark hair like his father and green eyes like his mother. They named him Samuel, after Jacob's father, and from the moment Eliza held him, she knew that everything she had survived had been worth it to bring her to this moment, to this life. Samuel was a happy baby, and watching Jacob with him made Eliza fall in love with her husband all over again. He was patient and gentle, singing lullabies in a soft voice, walking the floor with Samuel when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint. He was everything a father should be, everything Eliza's own father had been before he died. As Samuel grew, the ranch prospered. Jacob expanded the herd, built new fences, improved the irrigation system. Eliza started a garden, began selling eggs and vegetables in town, even started teaching some of the neighbor children to read in exchange for help with chores. They were building something together, something solid and lasting. 2 years later, Eliza gave birth to a daughter, a tiny, delicate baby they named Sarah after Jacob's first wife. Eliza had suggested the name, wanting to honor the woman who had loved Jacob first, who had taught him how to be the kind of man who could help Eliza heal. Jacob had cried when she proposed it, and Eliza knew she had done the right thing. Sarah was different from Samuel, quieter, more observant, but no less loved. The four of them made a family, complete and whole, and sometimes Eliza had to pinch herself to believe it was real, that this was actually her life. One evening in the summer of 1883, when Samuel was 3 and Sarah was 1, Eliza and Jacob sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Samuel was showing Sarah how to chase fireflies. His patience with his little sister, a mirror of his father's patience with everyone. "Do you remember when I told you I was too broken to love?" Eliza asked quietly. Jacob looked at her, a soft smile on his face. "I remember. I was wrong. I was not too broken. I just needed someone to hold the pieces together long enough for me to heal." "You did the healing yourself," Jacob said. "I just gave you a safe place to do it." Eliza shook her head. "No, you gave me so much more than that. You gave me a reason to heal, a future to believe in. You gave me love when I thought I would never deserve it. You gave me everything." Jacob took her hand and raised it to his lips. "You gave me everything too. After Sarah died, I thought I was done, that I would just go through the motions for the rest of my life. Then you came along, and you reminded me what it meant to be alive. You saved me as much as I saved you." "Then I guess we saved each other," Eliza said. "I guess we did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their land, over the life they had built together. It had not been easy. There had been hard times, lean years, moments of doubt and fear. But they had faced it all together, and they had survived, thrived even. Eliza thought about the girl she had been, the one who had watched her husband die and felt nothing but relief. She thought about the woman she had become, the one who could love and be loved, who could trust and be trusted, who could hope for a future instead of just surviving the present. The transformation had been slow and painful, but it had been real. As the years passed, the ranch continued to grow. Samuel grew into a strong, capable boy who loved the land as much as his father did. Sarah grew into a bright, curious girl who loved books and learning. Eliza and Jacob added 2 more children to their family, another son named Thomas, not after Eliza's first husband, but after Jacob's brother, and then finally another daughter named Emma. Their family was loud and chaotic and full of love, and every day Eliza thanked God for bringing her to this place, to this man, to this life. She stayed involved in the community, teaching children to read, helping at barn raisings, supporting other women who found themselves in difficult situations. She remembered what it was like to be alone and afraid, and she made sure no one in her community had to feel that way if she could help it. Jacob became a respected rancher and a voice for fairness in their growing community. He advocated for better treatment of the remaining native populations, for fair wages for ranch hands, for education for all children regardless of their circumstances. He and Eliza were partners in every sense of the word, supporting each other's passions and dreams. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Jacob took Eliza back to the creek, where he had first told her he cared for her. The children were with Mrs. Calloway, who despite her age still ran the boarding house and doted on the Brennan children whenever she got the chance. "Do you remember this place?" Jacob asked as they dismounted. Eliza smiled. "Of course. This is where you told me you cared about me, where I told you I was scared, where we decided to try." "Best decision I ever made," Jacob said, pulling her close. "You have given me 10 years of happiness I never thought I would have again. You have given me 4 beautiful children and a life worth living. I love you more now than I did then, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." Eliza reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "I never thought I could be this happy. I never thought I deserved it. But you showed me that I did, that everyone deserves love and kindness and a second chance. You held the pieces together until I could stand on my own, and then you stood beside me as an equal. I love you, Jacob Brennan, with everything I am." They kissed under the same sky where they had first acknowledged their feelings, and it felt like coming home, like closing a circle that had started with pain and ended with joy. As they rode back to the ranch, Eliza thought about how far they had both come. Jacob had healed from the loss of his first wife, had learned to love again without forgetting what he had before. Eliza had healed from years of abuse and loss, had learned that her past did not define her future, that she was worthy of love and respect. Their children grew and thrived. Samuel eventually took over more of the ranch responsibilities, showing the same dedication and fairness his father had. Sarah became a teacher, opening a school in Deadwood and teaching children of all backgrounds. Thomas became a veterinarian, studying back east before returning to help the ranchers and farmers of South Dakota. Emma, their youngest, became an advocate for women's rights, traveling and speaking and fighting for the kind of future she had seen modeled in her parents' equal partnership. Eliza and Jacob grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies slowing down but their love never diminishing. They sat on their porch in the evenings, holding hands, watching their grandchildren play in the same yard where their children had played, and they knew they had built something that would last, something that would echo through generations. In the spring of 1910, when Eliza was 53 and Jacob was 56, he suffered a heart attack while mending a fence. He survived, but it left him weak, and they both knew his time was limited. Eliza cared for him with the same tenderness he had shown her all those years ago, and they spent their days reminiscing, laughing, sometimes crying, but always together. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, Jacob said, "I am not afraid of dying, but I'm afraid of leaving you." Eliza squeezed his hand. "Do not be. You taught me how to be strong, how to stand on my own. I will miss you every day for the rest of my life, but I will be all right, and we will see each other again." "You promise?" he asked, his voice weak. "I promise," she said. Jacob Brennan died peacefully in his sleep 3 nights later, with Eliza beside him holding his hand. She grieved deeply, but she did not break. She had learned how to carry sorrow without being crushed by it, how to honor the dead while still living fully. She lived another 15 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, still teaching, still advocating, still making a difference. And every evening she sat on the porch of the ranch and talked to Jacob as if he were still there, telling him about their family, about the world that was changing so fast, about how much she loved him and missed him. When Eliza Brennan died in 1925 at the age of 68, she was surrounded by 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. She died knowing she had lived a life of purpose and love, that she had taken the broken pieces of herself and built something beautiful. Her last words were, "I am coming, Jacob. Hold the pieces together just a little longer." They buried her beside him on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as wide and blue as the one they had watched together for so many years, and the family they had built carried on their legacy, generation after generation, a testament to the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, to the truth that no one is ever too broken to be loved. They just need someone willing to hold the pieces together while they heal.